All right, so today we're going to talk about face checking. Face checking is saying that you don't know what a particular ice or set of ice are in front of a particular server, and you decide to run that server and face check into that ice, taking a chance that it's going to do something really bad to you. So that's what face checking is as a concept. But face checking, I think, is also important as a strategy for players who know what they're doing, as well as, and this is really where I want to take this video, for beginners. Okay, so for older players who know what they're doing, face checking is often used as a strategy for two reasons, and I'll explain what it is. Okay, so face checking as a strategy is you not deploying any cards that are important for your overall strategy that you're concerned about losing, and especially losing from ice, right? So understanding what the current card pool is and what threats are there will allow you to know if you can deploy a hardware, right? In the original core set, you can deploy a hardware and face check no problem, because there are no ice that cause you to lose a hardware. However, and later on down the meta, down the card pool, you get cards that start to destroy a hardware. You also potentially have cards that will get rid of any card on the board, I believe, so you could lose resources. So that is card pool dependent, but as a whole, so often you don't want to you definitely don't want to deploy your breakers when you face check, especially in original core. That's really what you're watching out for, and you're also making sure that you keep your card pool, your hand size up, so that you can take care of any kind of net damage, right? So face checking would be, I'm not going to put out any cards yet, and I'm going to go ahead and run on the some of the corpse servers to make them res that ice. And why would you want to do that? Two reasons, really, mainly, is that one, you want to identify what's out there, right? I told you, if you go back and watch the video Unknowns First, this is another aspect of that, is knowing what's out there, making the corp res it. Now you have a piece of the information. You know, again, I've said this before, especially as the runner, your job is to solve the puzzle. Your job is to figure out what's out there and then plan your strategy accordingly to break the puzzle and succeed. So if you have a piece of ice that's now been rezzed, now you don't have to waste your time putting out a code gate breaker right now. If it's a barrier and you have a barrier in hand, you can be more proficient with your clicks by just deploying what you need right now to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. You can also know, again, what it is, so you know that you're looking for a barrier breaker. You know that you're waiting to try and find that, so you're going to start pushing to hunt that down. If you really need to get into that server, maybe you say, okay, it's a barrier breaker, it's R&D, I'm a criminal, so I'll focus in on headquarters, especially if I can get into headquarters, and leave R&D alone right now and wait for that barrier to come out. Those are the kind of decisions you can make now that you have that information. So having the information is vital. So face checking, once again, is a great way to get that initial information and start putting out the cards that you actually need for this particular game to succeed. Now, this and that goes into another concept of just doing what you need right now, and not necessarily always just trying to plan and put out cards that you may need later. That is a viable strategy, especially for decks. There are some decks that do not use face checking as a strategy. Some shaper decks and some of the mini factions, and even some Crim and Anarch decks, I'm sure, will want to set up their entire rig, get it set up, or almost all of it, and then just go to work and plan to whoop the corp in the middle to late game, and that's a good plan unless you've got a corp that's a fast deck and they get what they need to accomplish that fast deck, right? So you have to take that into consideration. But overall, there are a lot of decks that are either a hybrid of going long game and early aggression, or just decks that play to doing face checks early, then starting to deploy your stuff. And the reason again is getting that information. But secondly, and maybe even more importantly, probably equally as important, I'd say, is because you want to keep that corporation broke, right? You want to make them constantly be spending money on ice, keeping them underneath that 10 credit threshold is good. 5 credits or less is even better, obviously, but 5 credits is a threshold that a lot of people say that as a corp and a runner you want to try and stay above, because a lot of your options start to go away once you get under that 5 credit threshold, and the other side usually knows that if they're any good at Netrunner. So that's another principle. That's a bonus principle right now. I've started to apply that after I've heard it from some folks. That's another principle I apply. I always try and, if at all possible, I try and keep my credit pool above 5 credits, and I work hard at that, right? I've been constantly working at that. I always try and keep my hand size up to about 4 or 5 cards if all possible, and I always try and keep my credit pool above 5 credits and more if possible. Again, these are all things that sometimes I have to break that rule. Sometimes it's good to break that rule. But as a general principle, I work hard to concentrate on those to try and be on average, or for the most part, better at the game, right? So just a bonus tip there. But anyway, back to the point. Breaking the corp by making them res ice is a great way to keep them in the early game. And I'm gonna put the link to a article that I read. It's one of the first articles ever written on the STEM Hack website that talks about the early game, the mid game, and the late game. So I want you, if you have the time, go back and read that. Very informative, and it even goes into some of this of why you want to run early and check these ice for that reason. And again, if you can keep that corporation broke and also have the information, you're in a lot better place than letting them. And the reason why I even do this video is I was watching the bad publicity. I've been going back and watching the early videos and kind of working through the videos for bad publicity, just because they're a reasonable time of about 10-15 minutes usually, and just kind of seeing what they were thinking back in those days and everything. And one of them was on face checking. And so I got to thinking, they covered basically what I covered here, but I got to thinking, really, face checking is something that is also a very valuable tool for new players. Okay, and that's why I'm covering. That's why I decided to come back and cover this topic. And so with new players especially, we've talked about face checking as a concept, which is something that you do have to do even after you are a veteran, and it might not be a strategy, but sometimes you're going to have to face check. For instance, if they're on 4 agenda points and they just put a card in a remote server and advanced it twice, you're now left to say, either I'm going to face check on this and take a chance that it's not a trap and that these ice I can get through, or you're probably going to lose the game. So you have to make face checking decisions, and that's where I get into struggling. That's where it leaves kind of that concept idea, and it just leaves to what you have to do sometimes, and you have to know when to push your luck and take that chance, and when to sit back and not push and not face check. And that sometimes is just a estimated guess that ends up getting you burnt. And even the best players will tell you the whole thing of a corp, a strategy of the corp, is put you in a position where you have to face check, and they have the opportunity to hurt you in some way, from a trap in the server or ice that does something that you weren't prepared on. So that is all part of the game, and it's the best players are the best of that. And I can tell you right now, I'm way too aggressive with my face checks, and I oftentimes get burnt and lose games because of it, and that's something I need to improve on. But I also just want to get that. I love, again, playing games is a place where you can take chances with no real risk, and I love having that kind of adrenaline of like, man, this is all or nothing Hail Mary, and if I get it, I'm cheering and excited, and if I get it, I'm like, oh well, let's play again. So you can be okay with that. But as far as being consistent in your wins for like competitive play, that's going to get you in a little bit of trouble, and I need to do better at making better decisions in that area, obviously, just like most people out there playing Netrunner. But as a beginner concept, here we go, I know I got off on a side tangent. As a beginner concept, I encourage you as a new player, face check a bunch. I've had so many games where I have 6 ice out on the board, and the runner might run like one time finally on the ice towards the end of the game. By then it's already over. You have just made my life so easy. I got like 20 credits. I got ice that you have no clue what it is to know what breakers to get out, and I'm over here advancing agendas and playing games with you. You're making my life so easy, and I see it all the time from new players, and it's like the new player is scared of losing. I get it, but you're going to lose anyway, and you're going to lose a lot to better players. It's not that, see, what happens is you play that way a lot of times, and every once in a while you get lucky because I can't put an ice on R&D because I got agenda flooded and I have nothing but agendas in my hand, and you go in and you just scoop up a bunch of agendas and win, and you think you're getting better, but really you've just gotten that bad card draw on the other player's side that continues to encourage you not to face check and take chances as a young player. And so the real point is, as a new player, you have to be willing to die, to get programs trashed, to lose a bunch of games, to get better, period. You just have to die, lose. That's the only way you're really going to get better, because just sitting back and playing conservative and trying to be scared and being concerned that you might lose this game is not going to make you better. Because a major part of Netrunner, for me especially, and I'm sure this is for a lot of people, you can read a card as many times as you want, but until you get hit in the face with it, or until you play it yourself to some success, you'll never understand what that card really does in the mix of 49 or 45 other cards, right? So you need to learn the card pool by getting whacked in the face with ice, right? You learn ice that way the best. You learn ice by doing it to other people. So when you're the runner, the best way to get better and learn what you need to do in the long run is to face check and break the corp, one, which is part of the actual strategy. Keep the corp broke, understand what you need, but also you begin to learn the card pool and learn how these ice interact to mess you up. And then once you actually learn how these cards work in tandem and the different possibilities of you getting wrecked by ice, that's when you start to learn how to plan for them and say, I'm playing HB, an original core set. I've already got a barrier breaker out. I've got to be careful for this roto turret because it's got a trash program subroutine on it. So I'm going to have to either wait until I get a sentry or force him with some way to res that without running on it, unless I really have to do it, and then I've got to take chances. But that is all part of the game that you'll get better at with time. But for now, run the ice. And here's the thing, you're going to learn how to run the ice better, right? There's all kinds of nuances to face checking, right? There is the aspect of knowing the deck, understanding that there's a lot better chance that there's a roto turret in this deck than there is in another deck, but there could still be. But if you're dealing with an HB deck in original core, you might want to run first click. That way you can break through those ice with further clicks, right? Or, running first for any number of reasons that can hurt you. and in that way you can react to them for the rest of your turn. So all that's important, and you'll learn those nuances. For me, I'm going to tell you like this, especially if I'm playing a crim, but really just about any other just about any other deck I'm going to play, just because it's my playing style. If the corporation did not get a hedge fund and get up to 9 money, and they deploy a card on R&D, ice on R&D and headquarters, and they might have gained $1, so they're at a iced up R&D and headquarters, and they got $5 or $6, I am going to run R&D and then headquarters, or vice versa, depending on what I have in my hand, right? And you'll learn to do that better. You'll learn. But I'm going to make them spend that money and hopefully not be able to res one of them and me get through, right? I'm going to make those decisions. And again, there's a lot of things that go into that, right? If you're playing Gentekian, it could be a Neurokatana, which does 3 net damage, and you got 2 of your breakers in there. Then you got to make that command decision. Do I face check on this Neurokatana? Do I face check on this ice? Would it possibly be in a Neurokatana, and I lose both of my breakers, which is going to set me back? Those are the kind of decisions you got to make. But at the end of the day, as a general principle, just like we talk about drawing first, running first, getting to see information, staying above 5 credits, keeping your hand size up, all these general principles that are made to be broke as you get better and learn. As a general principle, as a new player, I want you to attempt to start making yourself stop being conservative and run and face check ice before you get your rig out, especially, and take chances and be willing to lose and be willing to die and any other fates that could become you as a runner, and be okay with that, so that you can in the long term advance much faster in your knowledge of the card pool, as well as your knowledge of how the card pool works together to be a threat against you, so that you can be a better runner. And not only do I encourage you, to do that as a new player, but anytime you go into a new card pool, or if you've been in a card pool and you've been playing against Wayland and now you're playing against MBM for the first time, face check. It's not like anybody is tallying up your wins to be like, oh, this guy's or gal's a terrible player. I mean, you probably are anyway, just like me for a long time. I've got almost 600 games in, and I still feel like I'm awful. This game has a lot going on, and it takes a lot of work unless you're just completely a genius. But it's just a matter of being willing to die for the long-term goal of learning the card pool and being better and understanding these nuances that make you a more proficient Netrunner player. So that's my encouragement for newer players, is to face check often with the goal of watching to see what the corp can actually do to you. Show me what you got. That's my feeling on it, especially if I'm going into a new card pool. Show me what you can do. This is a throwaway game for me. I'm going to learn something that's going to help me be smarter in the future of how this particular deck that's out there in this current card pool is. That is what I encourage you today. And again, you'll get there anyway. It's just gonna take you longer, right? It's gonna take you more work until you learn how to balance these different rules and learn how to actually play based upon what's in your hand better. But at the end of the day, starting out, I encourage you just to run early before you get stuff out that you don't want to lose. And I'm not talking about your whole first turn run. I'm talking about run headquarters, run R&D, deploy, play a sure. I'd probably play the sure gamble first, right, to make sure I get that money up in case you are let through and you can trash programs or things like that. But your turn might look like draw, sure gamble, run R&D, or run, sure gamble, desperado, run R&D, make him res an ice, right? Okay, that's a reasonable play. Now your next turn, you might draw another card, draw 2 cards, play place a resource of some sort that does something that's only kind of a tertiary portion of your strategy, not a main portion, and then run headquarters and make them res that ice, right? Those are the kind of things that you'll learn to balance. But at the end of the day, you're slowly putting out some stuff that you don't mind losing, and you're gaining money, and at the same time you're running around trying to make them spend money and learning the board state so you can keep looking for those right breakers, right? That's the kind of stuff you're going to learn how to do, and I encourage you to learn that balance. But at first, hey, run. As I say, always be running. There's a reason why they say that, because the way you win the game is accesses, so you got to get in and actually access cards, and the other way then you keep the court broke, and you keep them on their heels, especially in the early game while they're trying to break past that 5-10 credit area, and they're trying to get their ice up and operational. It's a very vulnerable time for the corporation. So anyway, that said, I know I'm starting to blab on and say the same thing over again. Face check, and I promise you it will progress your learning of the game and the card pool much faster than being scared to lose and thinking that you viably have some type of chance to win as a new player, very often against players that are that much better than you. Okay, so anyway, that's face checking. Hope that helps somebody, and I'm only telling you that because I've learned it. I have, and I want, whenever I play newer players, if they watch this and they don't sit around and just don't actually run any ice for the whole game, it makes for much funner games as well, right? I don't care about losing. I care about having a fun time and playing a game and continuing to grow as a Netrunner player so I can hopefully win more in the future. So anyway, that's face checking. Y'all take care.